Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the webinar this morning. Just going to give everyone else a couple of minutes to join us, and then we're going to kick off. So we'll be kicking off in just a couple of minutes. Okay, everyone. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, good evening, if you're joining us from around the world. Really great to have you with me for this webinar. This is part 2 of establishing asset management processes. So this is part 2 in a 4-part series around mastering hardware asset management with Microsoft Service Manager and Ireson. So I hope that you got the opportunity to be present on part 1 or to watch back the recording if you. That will set the scene very much for what we're going to cover today. Part 1 was all about just the introduction and overview of asset management. We're going to build on all that today to look at establishing asset management processes, our topic today. Well, for those of you who don't know me, let me introduce myself. My name is Jeff Ross. I am the lead consultant for Ireson in the EMEA region. I've worked for Ireson for 2.5 years now, during which time I've been involved with a number of things, mostly delivering projects to our customers. So that's helping them with IT service management and IT asset management projects, utilizing Microsoft Service Manager and Ireson tools, and obviously helping with building, creating and improving process as well. Before Ireson, I worked for a large engineering company in their in-house IT. So I've got a pretty good understanding of how things can work, not just in a webinar, in a lab, but in the real world as well. We're going to be looking at some demos later on today in the lab, but I'll draw on some things that are going to be slightly different in the real world, because we know it's a little bit messier out there when you've got actual real people involved and real devices, and obviously there's a lot more challenges. I can draw on some of that experience for that. So we're going to be here for the next hour covering this stuff. We've got a few slides to go through, talk through some bits, and we're going to jump into the demo and see some bits in there. Well, a couple of housekeeping things as well before we start. The webinar is being recorded. So if you do miss anything, or a colleague is missing out, then the video will be posted online after the webinar, and I'll explain at the end how you can get hold of that, along with the part 1 video. If you haven't seen that yet, it's worth checking out as well, even if you do that after today. And secondly, questions. So if you have any questions as we go through, please throw them in the question box there in your GoToWebinar pop-up. I am presenting by myself today, so I'm going to struggle to keep an eye on the questions as I'm presenting, but I will make sure I sort of periodically review them and try and answer any relevant ones as we go. And then we'll have a proper time at the end for any other questions, anything that we've not covered. Please make sure you put it in there. And we'll make sure we cover all questions before we close out today. All right. So for those of you who are new to Ireson, just a real quick bit of information about us. Been around for six years now. Was born in 2012. In that time, we've built up 1,200 customers, as you can see, around the globe. This stat's obviously close to my heart because the team I'm part of, 52,000 consulting hours delivered. So that's projects across all of our different customers, different sectors, different countries. And the thing that we're all very, very proud of is our high renewal rate. 95% of our customers come back year on year to renew their software licenses because they're recognizing the value in those tools. Not going to hang on this slide very long, but as you can see, we've got customers across the globe, across many different sectors. If you're looking for particular information around customers in your geographical region or industry, then reach out and we can help you there as well. But we've got customers across all different sectors. We're not focused on one particular part of the business. And here in kind of this nice simple slide really is the kind of 4 things what we do that make us an all-in-one partner. Service management, where we kind of came from. Service manager we feel does very well as a back-end system, but just needs a little bit of love on the interface. Asset management, what we're here to talk about today, again sits in very nicely into that service manager technology as an engine, and we just basically improve that solution, make it enterprise-ready asset management solution with our asset management tools. We help advanced remote support tools is one of the newer things from Ireson, so maybe that's new on your radar, which is helping to bring these support tools to the service desk to help deliver support to end users. And again, finally, the 4th area where I sit, which is the consulting services. So we can help with any of this stuff, any service management, asset management issues we provide consulting services for. Okay, so I'm going to speed up a little bit, but we have got a slide for each of the things. So I've covered this. This is what we do in service management, enhancing that service manager, really making it ready for the enterprise. Building on the powerful backend from Microsoft, just to kind of bring a better experience for your end users through self-service and to your support teams and analysts. And then in our asset management space, where we're sort of really focusing today, hopefully kind of familiar with what this tool does. Again, check out that part 1 if you really want that kind of more extensive overview of what the tool is about. But then it's allowing us to track all hardware and software. This webinar series is focusing on hardware asset management particularly, and helps understand the process around that. And then lastly, introducing the Ireson Control Center. This is these advanced remote support tools. This is a tool for organizations that meet 2 criteria. One is that they run configuration manager, SCCM, and 2 is that they have a support desk. So that hopefully covers most of you, because that's 2 pretty common things. And really it's about delivering some of that power of configuration manager to your service desk, so they can perform some of these troubleshooting first line functions. but it's doing that in a way that's really safe, really robust, doesn't cause any kind of worry and concern for your configuration manager admin team that are traditionally very afraid to kind of give away the keys there, and because of the great power of that solution. And then secondly, we know works for admins by allowing them to delegate some of that work, take away some of that day-to-day tasks they're having to do as an admin, and then brings them again a web interface where they can manage some of that SCCM data and reports. Again, if you want any information on any more information on any of these things we've covered, then please do get in touch. All the information is going to be available at the end of this webinar of how to. Okay, so this is what we're here to talk about today. We've got this 4-part webinar series on asset management processes. So part 1 was about 3 weeks ago with my colleague Mike. So hopefully, so as I said earlier, you've already joined that or been able to watch back the recording. Mike covered, say, that overview of asset management, what's new in asset management he covered as well. And then just the basics, how to install it, how to get up and running, an overview of the different classes and objects that you can do, and how to do your initial data import, which is a very kind of fundamental first step you need to do. You need to get your data into the system, and then you can start to manage it. So if you need to know any more about that, go back and review that recording. Here's where we are today, establishing asset management processes. So this is part 2. And today we're going to look at, the types of process that we need to think about. We're going to have a think about what kind of thing there is. Any kind of changing of an asset, anytime it moves physically, anytime it gets an update, anytime something happens to it, we need a process to deal with that and to track that. We're going to look at how to kind of think that through in a logical way. It's going to allow us to sort of map and document those processes. It's no good if this stuff just exists in one person's head. We need this stuff documented so that everyone's aware of what's going on. Everyone's, following that same process. Otherwise, things are not going to work if everyone's kind of doing their own thing, because no one's aware of what the process is. We'll look at the importance of training and process adoption. This is actually really, really key. Again, links into the idea of, documenting. Once you've documented them, you've got to train people on them. You've got to roll them out. You've got to show people. If you're an asset manager, if you're trying to manage all your assets by yourself, then there's a good chance you're going to really be struggling to actually do that, and you're going to find it hard to succeed by doing that. You've got to rely on other functions of IT. Even sometimes other functions outside of IT in the business are going to have some impact on asset management. If you've got central purchasing, then they're going to be procuring IT equipment, and there's going to be some tie-in to asset management. Not necessarily going to be in the system updating it, but there's going to be some trigger, something that they do which is part of that process, and you've got to consider that and consider those people. Certainly you're going to have other people who are going to be deploying kit, moving kit, bringing things back, updating, building. You're going to have desktop teams going to be doing that kind of stuff. You're going to have to rely on them again to make sure they understand your process and they can follow it and support you in that. If you're trying to do it all yourself, it's going to be really, really hard. And then you've also got your server teams, your infrastructure teams. They're spinning up VMs every 5 minutes as they want. We live in a world which is, where it's possible to do that, and that's great. But that's got knock-on effects again for asset management. Somebody spins up a VM just because they want to try something out. Well, that's consumed a license. That's taken something. That's taken resources. That needs tracking. So you've got to make sure that all that's kind of taken into consideration. There's a lot of other people that just going to be doing their day-to-day job. They may even realize it right now, but that's going to have a knock-on effect on asset management. And you've got to engage with those people and make sure they understand the implications and the reasons why it's so important. Otherwise, they're not going to, be engaged to actually want to help you. I kind of covered it, keeping us up to date. So any changes that are happening, we need to make sure we're keeping the system up to date. Back to session 1, where Mike covered how to import initial data. We can get all our data in spreadsheets and CSV files and get it all into the system and that's really good, and that's a great place to be. And you know, if you're following this webinar series step by step, that's where you are now, and that's fantastic. But you know, the day after you've done that, the data isn't 100% accurate. Someone's going to have, you know, someone's going to have left your organization. What's happened to their kit? Where's their laptop? Where's their phone? You maybe got a new starter and someone's bought a new laptop. Well, has that been put in the system? You know, something's been taken out of the stockroom, something's been put back in the stockroom, something's been moved from one user to another. All this kind of stuff is going on all the time in your organization. As I said, people spinning up VMs, new infrastructure coming in and out. So importing your data is a really critical first step, and it's a great place to get to, but you don't really want to be kind of doing that until you've got all this process in place in order to keep it up to date. Otherwise, it's wrong straight away. And if you've got incorrect data, it's not much more valuable than no data, because you don't know what's right and what's wrong. Now, you know, again, in the real world, that's very difficult to be 100% accurate all the time. Understand that. People are always going to move something and not tell anybody. People are always going to pass their laptop to somebody else and not tell anybody. And so, you know, it's very hard to obviously be 100% accurate. So again, we want to be realistic here, but you want to make sure you've kind of thought through as many different scenarios as you can of what can happen, and make sure you've got a process to deal with each of those and how you're going to keep the data up to date. And then that last point here, you know, identifying invalid cases and next steps. That is about that. That's about trying to then catch things maybe after the fact. There are going to be processes you miss. There are going to be things that don't happen. There are going to be people that bypass process. That's people. That's the world we live in. So what can we do to try and, you know, catch those issues and fix them after the fact? So at least again, we kind of keep our data as accurate as we possibly can, so that it provides the most value to our organization. So that's what we're doing today, just to look into the future a little bit. That's parts 3 and 4 of this 4-part series. Part 3 is going to be identifying and overcoming roadblocks. So that's going to be in September, again with myself, where we're going to look at, once we've identified these kind of roadblocks, these issues, these people that aren't following process, or these reasons why a process can't be followed, whatever it might be. You know, when something is actually stopping a process being followed, whatever it might be, we're going to be identifying that, and how do we overcome that? How can we try and avoid that happening proactively? So the last part today is about kind of being reactive, fixing after the fact. Next part will be all about how we can be a bit more proactive about that and catch those as they happen, in order to make sure the data is right, you know, first time, which is always going to be more efficient and more accurate. And then the last part in October time, apologies for the Americanism here, notifications, automation, and vacation. So the idea there is we can set up some notifications to help identify, you know, when something goes wrong, we can notify the right person that, you know, hopefully it's not going to be you as the primary asset manager. There's going to be other people that can kind of take care of that. You're not going to look at every single issue yourself, depending on what that is. We can use automation to increase consistency and efficiency, remove that human element to remove human error. And, you know, the idea there is if you get all that right, then head off on a vacation, a well-earned holiday. Because once you get to that place where things are kind of running themselves and looking after it, then I'm not saying you can completely turn your back on it. But you know, if you get all that process in place, then things look after themselves very nicely. And you're in a great place going forward, and you make sure your data is going to stay up to date and provide that value. All right, and a quick look in the question panel. Nothing at the moment, but yeah, any questions, do please just put them in there and I will have a look. Okay, so types of process to consider. What kind of things do we need to have a process for? What we're going to focus on today is our core hardware asset life cycle. Something really, really fundamental to asset management is this kind of life cycle of an asset as it goes to its sort of phases in life, its states, kind of cradle to grave of an asset. As we kind of walk it through this life cycle, there's going to be all this process we realize needs to be thought through. So hopefully this little drop down looks familiar to you. HW asset status, hardware asset status, appears on a hardware asset form. It's kind of just in there amongst all the different data. And when you first look at the hardware asset form, there's a lot of boxes there, a lot of different things to fill in. This one can get a little bit lost amongst them. But this is actually really, really critical to successful asset management, is understanding this concept of a hardware asset status and where that fits into the life cycle of a hardware asset. So at the box, you get these values, which is a kind of rudimentary life cycle, but we can obviously extend that as we needed. And that gives us these kind of key functions, really: ordering hardware, receiving hardware, preparing hardware, deploying of hardware, retiring of hardware, and disposing of hardware. Each of these functions is as they kind of move through the life cycle, and each of these we need a process for. How do we do it? Who does it? What exactly does that mean? What does it actually involve? Deploying a piece of hardware does not just involve taking it out of the cupboard and putting it on the desk. We know that there's other things involved there, but exactly what those are, that's what we need to consider. That's what we need to document. That's what we need to train all of our staff, so we're all doing it the same, we're all doing it consistently. And then obviously making sure that that includes the updating of the system somehow so the record stays accurate. There's also some sort of one-off little pieces within that for the odd areas. We do have the loaned status there at the box. So if you have a loan process, you may use that. Now, some people have specific devices, actual units that are loaner units. If someone needs one for a conference or they forget their device in one day, you have some kit that's dedicated for that, and you can have a process around that. Some people think of a loan as just a very short deployment. So even if it is just for one day or a couple of days, and therefore it's no different from a deploying process. But again, that's something to consider. How do you deal with the kind of real short-term stuff? Something that's not in this list out of box, but is actually pretty critical. Two kind of areas here: stolen or missing. Either as one or even as two separate states you may want to add. As we know in asset management, it's really important to track exactly where each device is and where it went, and that's why we have this disposed state at the end of a life cycle. We never delete an asset record because we always want to keep a record that what we had it, what it did, what it was, and the fact that it's now disposed properly. If it gets lost or stolen, we also need to record that it wasn't disposed of properly. There's going to be no disposal certificate, but we obviously need to record that was the case in that situation. Maybe there's some other reference, a crime report, an insurance reference, a police report, something like that, that we can sort of identify that we did our due diligence on that. We made sure we kind of covered that off properly. Hopefully not used very often. Hopefully not losing very much or getting stolen. But again, in the real world, it happens. I've never lost a laptop in my lab, but we know in the real world it does happen. So you want to be able to, deal with that scenario. And then again, the last one, which again often happens in the real world, is this kind of idea of devices waiting to be wiped, which need to be kind of kept separate because they've got data on them. They can't go out the door yet. We've got to make sure we've cleaned up them properly. Want to make sure we kind of track that as a separate status, that they are waiting to have their data wiped. Or the other one is that holding without wipe. Maybe that's just because of your lever processes. You retain that device for so many days, just in case there's something on there that was not stored in the correct location, or if there's some kind of legal issue going on in your organization and you need to basically retain data as it is on devices. You maybe want to track that these devices are not to be wiped, they're not to be touched, they're just to be left somewhere securely because of some ongoing issue. And again, it happens not very often, but it does happen. If it hasn't happened yet, it will happen to you at some point. Management will come and say, we've got to keep this piece of kit, no one wants to touch it, no one wants to move the data, but we've got to keep it, and I don't know how long for, just keep it. So you want to kind of, again, have a process of how you're going to deal with that. You want to have that ready before you get asked, rather than well, as you're asked and you don't really know what you're doing. So we'll see how we can kind of think about this a bit more logically. We're going to draw this out. I'll move on to my next slide. We're going to map these statuses into kind of a diagram, a life cycle diagram, and this will build out as we go. So there I've got my kind of key stages: ordered, received, in stock, deployed, retired, and disposed as a kind of starting point. And what we're going to think about is then, from each state, what other states can we go to? And that's going to kind of establish our diagram of how we can get from one state to a different one. So, it starts off nice and easy from ordered. Once we order a device, the next thing's going to happen is it's going to get received. There's nowhere else it can really go to. We're not going to deploy it straight from ordered. It's got to go through that receiving process, whatever that is. However, from being received, it might go into stock. It might go straight out to deployed. It depends if we bought it for a particular use, for a particular user. It's going to come in and we're going to give it straight to that user. Or it might be that we buy in bulk, we buy 50 at a time, and then we call them off as needed. So they're going to go into the stock room and await there. Once they're in stock, then they're going to get deployed as needed. And the second line makes more sense, hopefully you're not taking them straight from ordered, received, in stock, and then retiring them. I'm sure it has happened, in some organizations where they've just bought too many and they've just sat there until they are obsolete. Hopefully not happening very often. But once we then think about where it can go from deployed, of course, from deployed, it can go back to stock when someone's finished with it. It can either go back to stock or it can go on to retired. If it's still fit for purpose, if it's still good, it can go back to stock. If it's broken, damaged, or just obsolete, then it's going to go straight to retired. Obviously, then once from deployed, it's gone back to stock, then there's a fair chance that it might then end up going into retired from stock. As you periodically review your stock room and find anything that's been sat there a little while, this is now obsolete. We're going to take these out of business use. So in stock to retired, I think is quite common, but hopefully not of unused stuff that's gone back into stock after being used in your business. From retired, then we're going to go on to disposed and get rid of it. Just from a process point of view, the difference between retired and disposed, they should both be out of circulation. Retired means that you still have it, you're still in control of it, it still exists in your building, but it's been marked for disposal, not going to be used anymore. And then finally disposed is when it's gone. It's now out of your control. You've handed it over to your secure IT disposal partner or whatever your process is. You've got your certificate, etc., to make sure it's all been handled properly, and it's gone off to hopefully be recycled to make new computers. But at that point, it's left your organization. It's sort of outside of your control anymore. But also, you still want to track that you've done that. Okay, so that's our kind of royal key lifestyle. But as we talked about, in the real world, things get a little bit messier. You may have a configured kind of state. You may draw a distinction between in stock and configured. In stock just means, it's on the shelf, it's ready to be used, but it's not actually ready to go out to a user yet. Once it's been built and cleaned and whatever, tested, whatever your process is going to be, got the asset sticker on it, whatever, then it's configured. Now it's ready to go, and then it can go on to deployed. When it's if it's finished with from a particular user, it can go back to in stock. It's got to go back through configured again before it can be deployed again. So you may sort of find use for that distinction. You don't want to get caught out if you get asked how many devices have we got in stock, and you say, oh, we got loads, we've got 57, and they say, great, we need 50 of them deployed tomorrow. And you don't want to then have to go, well, actually, they're not built, they're still in their original boxes from the manufacturer. We still got to get them out, check them, test them, put the OS on them, deploy the software, whatever. You don't want to kind of get caught out in that sense. So if that's going to be helpful, you can make that distinction between in stock and then configured, ready to go. We're ready to ship those out, onto desks. Kind of similarly, the kind of other end of the life cycle, you may go from deployed, not straight to stock and retired. You may want to go through like a return state. So that's kind of awaiting its fate kind of place. It just comes back in. If the user's finished with it, if the user's left and it comes back to IT, it just goes into a returned state, may go into a physical, a physical shelf allocated for that. This is all the stuff that's come back. And then somebody who's, maybe the right person to do that task and then go through that and go, decide what is fit for purpose, go back into stock, and what is not goes into the retired pile. So it depends on your retirement policy. If it's done just on, the model number, that's pretty straightforward. Probably most people can follow that. They can just make that decision as it comes back in and put it in the correct state, the correct location of where that should be. If it's a bit more subjective, done on kind of the actual damage to the unit, how it looks, how it's functioning, then you may want to, keep things in a returned state, or another word that suits you better, until they're ready to have that decision made. Then again, we've got our loaner process. Again, you may want to make a distinction: loaner in stock and loaner deployed. So you have a separate stock of units, a separate place, a separate kind of allocation devices that are loaners. They can be a stock, they can be out with people, loaned, you might call that. Again, there's a whole bunch of arrows that throw in for that and go from, you may purchase things, they go straight into being a loaner stock. Maybe the old stock that's sat in your stocking for a while, that can then become loaner stock. It's no good for actual, permanent devices, but it's perfectly fine for loaner kit. So we'll kind of degrade it to that, into a loaner stock. Obviously, you can go back and forth from loaner stock to loaner deployed as it goes in and out. And then again, eventually you're going to retire that at some point. It's going to even become obsolete for a loaner unit at some point. People are going to stop wanting it. So you've got to get rid of it. Okay, and again, this is just my examples. You're going to maybe have other processes you need to throw on here and think it through. But the kind of key point here is then for each of these arrows we've now drawn, and again, your diagram may even be more complex than this. For each of these arrows, we need a process. We need what that task actually involves. So, I forgot to add on the lost and stolen there. Missing or stolen. So obviously you can go from pretty much any of these states into the missing or stolen. I'm not going to draw all the arrows because that would just get messy, and actually probably the process is going to be identical or very similar depending on where it comes from to the missing or stolen. But it can pretty much go from any of these. Possibly not from disposed. Once it's disposed outside your control, you can't really then lose it. But I think it can pretty much go from anywhere else to missing or stolen. So, and again, ordered, arguably not as well. It depends when is defined that you kind of take control of it. But yes, I just wanted to highlight. Yeah. So today we're going to focus. So for the next example, we're going to focus on this arrow here that's gone green, and that is the going from in stock to deploy. That's kind of pretty basic. We're going to go and give this to a user so it can actually do some work for our organization. I say for each of these arrows, you need to define what that process involves, both physically, actually moving of equipment, but also, updating of records, updating of other systems, multiple things may need updating, multiple systems may need updating as well. So that's all needs to have that process considered. So there's a lot going on here. So this is probably a basic example. When you draw this out, you may find you've got even more going on. You want to start with the kind of actual key ones, but you want to make sure you've at least considered all of these scenarios before you really kind of go live with the data, because you get all your data in and all of a sudden something happens, it gets lost. If you've not thought of how you're going to handle that, then you're not going to have a good process for that, and that's when stuff gets missed. That's when your data very quickly can become wrong and out of date. So you want to make sure you've thought, at least consider all of these areas. One last thing before we move on from this slide is actually something else to consider as well is at which point in this life cycle, which point in this flow do you actually create the records in your SaaS and asset management solution. Not many customers actually add them on at the ordered state. Some do, some get a decent, when they place an order, they immediately get back, or within a couple of working days, they get back a report from the vendor that say these serial numbers have been allocated to you, you're going to get these units, and they can then go and actually create the records for those. And that means that they're expecting them, they know that they're going to get that number. It's a nice way of tracking. If you order 50 and only 49 turn up, immediately you're going to sort of see that actually in your system as you go to then update those 50 records with more information of actually what's turned up. You're going to realize that one's missing, and you can pick up on that nice and easily. So there's certainly a case for it, but you do need to obviously have a good relationship with your vendor and make sure you're getting all that information, and doesn't always happen. So I'd say that's not the most common. Most people go with either received or in stock, as that's the point which they add it into their system. And again, maybe there's not even any distinction between received and in stock, especially if you've also got the idea of the configured. So it's going to depend on your organization. I think of received as it's physically, arrived with the organization. It's in the building, but it could be down in the loading dock. It's not actually with IT yet, but we have received it. In stock means it's now with IT, it's registered, we've checked it off. Now again, that may not really be, that may be kind of an instantaneous process for you. Stuff arrives, comes straight to you, you check it in IT, in which case maybe that is the same thing. So that's something to consider as well. But at some point in probably those first three, you're going to want to add it into the system. I don't think you want to wait till you're deploying it to be added on as a record, as an asset record. You're going to miss out quite a lot of value from that. You're not going to know how much kit you've got in stock accurately. So it's going to make your stock management very difficult if you do that, because you will have some things in stock when they've been deployed and then gone back to in stock, but not any new kit that's come brand new gone into stock. So but yeah, you need to think about when you're actually going to create the record for it in the system. So I just wanted to mention that before we moved on from this diagram. Just to recap, we're going to look at this process here that's going from in stock to deploy. This green arrow, that we can see how we actually deploy a device. So we're going to go and have a look actually at tool for a second. Just want to say, obviously, we're going to focus here on the process with regards to the asset management system. There's going to be a whole heap of other process that needs following as well outside of this, about actually physically deploying it, how you get it from the stockroom, how you select which unit gets deployed. Is that going to be predetermined? Is it going to be up to the individual doing that task just to go and pick one? Have you got different types, different grades, different categories of devices that you need to consider there? What goes with it? Is it just going to be that unit? Is there sort of an extra, sort of a bundle that goes with certain things? So although we might say go and deploy a laptop, do we kind of imply you need to also provide a docking station, a monitor, a lock, a bag? And if, again, we need to make sure that's documented as part of our overall process, so that everyone does it the same. You get that consistent experience. But we're not going to focus on that kind of stuff. We're going to focus on actually the technology side of things, the asset management solution. But I just wanted to kind of draw reference to that. You can't forget about all that. That all needs doing as well. And it gets actually more complicated with the kind of the other ones. They're returning it, bringing it back from deploy. You make sure you've got all of those extra bits and not just brought the actual main unit back and left all that on the desk. So all that does need considering. Right, let's jump into my lab, renew my session. So look in the question box whilst we're here. And there is one. It's very small. Give me a second. Right. Just going to get this login in. So we have a couple of questions. Sorry I missed these. Looks like they've been here a little while. Claire asked, where is the hardware asset status drop down? I'll show you in just 1 second. Claire, as this loads, it's a perfect time to show you. And secondly, Stephane asked, how would you match an ordered item that's already in asset management with an actual serial number? If I understand the question, I think you've answered it yourself really. It's that the serial number is generally a pretty good key to go for. So how do you match an ordered item that's already in asset management? So it's if your vendor provides you with a list of serial numbers, you can actually import those as assets with that serial number. When that unit physically arrives, you can match on the serial number on the box or on the unit itself to show that you've got it. You can then change the status. You can then add in more information. Maybe you can then add in at that point the tag. You then sticker it, and you can add in the tag, whatever your process is. So hopefully I answered your question, Stephane, but just put back to me if it doesn't. I'll quickly answer your question, Claire, but I'm going to sort of loop through this whole piece anyway. But so on the hardware asset form, this is the out-of-the-box form. In future webinars, we're going to look at how we can actually change this to suit our process and improve our process and make our process more efficient. But out of the box, it lives here, this HW asset status. In the console, the form is very similar layouts. It's in a sort of equivalent place in the console. So after the big description box, you've got this kind of section here, and it's here, hardware asset status. And there's the values there. So I hope that answers your question, Claire. And just loop back again to Stephane. At order time, you do not have a serial number yet, do you? So that's going to depend on your procurement process. So it's only going to work if you do have a serial number at order time, or at least very soon after it. Some vendors that I've personally worked with I would provide that information. A few days after your order, they can then allocate from their system your 50 serial numbers. You're going to get these 50 devices. Obviously, that only works if you've got a big contract, you're a big buyer with one of those big vendors, and you're buying direct probably as well, rather than through any kind of reseller. If you don't have that relationship, and not everyone will, again, in the real world, it's not that achievable. So if that's the case, then you're not going to be able to basically add them in at ordering state, unless you just want to add in placeholders, laptop 1, laptop 2, laptop 3, and with no serial number. I think that's not really bringing you any value. So I wouldn't recommend doing that, because you've got nothing to match up on. It doesn't really mean anything. Okay, so hopefully that answers and clears all that up. Thanks for the questions, though. I appreciate that little break just to let me get logged into the system. So thank you. Okay, so here we are in a hardware asset. Now I've already done my work from last webinar. I've imported it in. I've got it in my system. But as we can see from our hardware asset, it is in stock. So we're going to look at our deployment process and what that going to involve. I'm just going to look through this form, look through all the different things here, and discuss through what we might need to include in our deployment process, taking it from in stock to deployed. And I'm not going to, I'm not here to tell you how to do it. That's something you need to consider. You need to think about what's valuable for you. Most of this comes down to, the cost of doing it in terms of literally administrative effort in the system versus the value it brings to your organization. Everything probably brings some value, but if that value is very significant, very small, not significant, and the administrative effort to get that data in, update it is large, then you're not going to do it. It's not worth it. So everything's a trade-off, and it's about trying to work out which for you is worth doing. It's going to bring you value. So let's just start with that in name, because actually it's quite a difficult one to get right. It's easy for laptops and desktops, to be fair, because they have a name. Actually the Windows device has a name. We put a name into it. It reports that name through our network tools. All of our sort of network scanning devices will pick that up, and that's very useful. But two things to mention on that is just when you're thinking about how you're going to use asset name, consider the non-Windows devices. You know, a mobile phone doesn't have a name in the same way. A printer might have a name, it might not. So you've got to think of your other types of assets you're going to want to track and have a kind of consistent approach with the name field. And secondly, is that if you're going to have your name as the kind of Windows computer name, the name of the device, then when you first get it and it's in stock and it's not yet built, it doesn't have a name. It hasn't been named yet. It's not actually ever been turned on yet. So if you want to add it into the system at that point, again, what are you going to put in this name box? So you've got to consider that scenario as well. That's why I personally quite like having the name as the asset tag. So you see actually got a match on there. That in my kind of pseudo world here, that's the sticker physically stuck onto this not physical laptop, but you get the idea. And I can obviously stick that on as soon as I get it, and that is its name. Even though it's not actually called that, it's not yet got that proper identity on the network, that's the name it's going to have. But if your names are kind of auto-generated during your build process, that's not going to be possible. You're not going to have that name yet. That's not to say that doesn't mean you can't add it on yet, because you can always change this name. This is not a read-only field like asset ideas. We can change that name as we go through the life cycle. So you may, when you create it, if it doesn't yet have a name, you may just put the serial number there. That is its only identifier at that stage. When it's in that box in the stockroom and it's never been unpacked, that's really the only identifier you have for it is a serial number. So if that's all you've got, that's all you've got. And if you want to add in the system, that's all you've got. And I think that's perfectly fine to use, but then that's part of your process somewhere. It might be your deployment process where you then now rename that to the name of the unit, the actual name. It could be part of your build process when actually it does receive its name that you do it then. Again, that's going to vary. It might be that you're using the configuration manager connector and all the asset workflows, and eventually that name's going to come through anyway after it's been built and deployed and been on the desk for a couple of days. And it might be that you're happy for that to come through automatically in a couple of days' time, rather than go through that effort of having to get the right name put into this box. So again, all that needs considering. It may be part of your deployment process to actually put that correct name in with what is the actual device name. Primary user, I think certainly will be part of your deployment process, or at least primary user in conjunction with, if I flip over to our finance tab, we've got our custodian here as well. Again, not going to go into all the detail. We've got two basically user fields on the form here, where we can actually tie a device to a user. And I think when you deploy a device to a user, if it goes to a user, then you want to be setting at least one of those. Again, in accordance with the process of how you use those two fields together. But again, not absolutely always, because you're not necessarily deploying a device to a person. You could be deploying a server, and it just is going to go into a rack. You could be deploying a hot desk machine that is used by anybody. It may still have a custodian who looks after it, who's responsible for it. It may not. So again, something to certainly consider, but it's not necessarily there every time. Catalog item fusing, it's hopefully already set. That's kind of part of the core kind of identity of an asset. If we scroll down, as is a manufacturer model. And we'll look at some of this stuff in future webinars, how we can help us to bring better process around these fields. Let's think about our deployment task at the moment. Again, serial number is not going to change, we know that. On deployment, asset tag, just like the name, that might need setting at deployment time. If that's how you're going to work, then make sure that's part of your documentation, part of your training of how to deploy an asset. You've got to come in here, update the asset tag field. The status definitely is going to need changing. We're going to need to change that from in stock to deployed. Pretty clear there. You can see in my list, I've got my extra field, I've got configured, I've got returned, I've got lost and stolen as well. So I've got those extra values. But in this case, absolutely in our deployment process, we're going to be changing that to deployed. That's pretty clear. Again, type itself shouldn't need changing. That's part of the kind of core identity of the device. But let's scroll down, let's see what else we've got. Location. Now, interesting I've already got a location here on my stock asset. That's because I want to track where it is in stock. If I've got multiple stock rooms, if I've got stock rooms in each of my offices or in multiple floors in one office, multiple physical rooms or even racks or shelves within a stock room, and I want to track those as separate locations, then I may well have a location even though it's in stock. But that is, if that's the case, that's almost certainly something that's going to change when it gets deployed. Or maybe that you don't, you only have one place for stock, so you don't need to bother putting actually in a stock room location. You can just say when it's in stock, we blank out the location because we know it's in stock. But in that case, when you deploy it, you want to set the location to where it's going to be with that user. Okay, not necessarily always. Some things don't really have a fixed location. I think putting a location in for a mobile phone is pretty pointless exercise because the whole point of a mobile phone is it moves around. Pretty much the same argument for a laptop, although they tend to be a bit more fixed. But again, that's going to be up to you for your consideration to decide how you're going to handle location there. But something that you want to set. I'm going to deploy this to my Paris office. Okay, same for organization. If we're deploying this to a particular part of our company, kind of a department, we can create those as organizations and set that there where it's gone. So this is pretty important. And I've just seen the time, so I'm going to speed up a little bit. Manual inventory date. This, if you're going to use this field here for when when it was physically last seen, this is when someone actually last held in their hands and said, yes, it's here, it exists, the information is correct on it. Then that may be something you want to set, because that's going to happen during this deployment process. Someone's going to physically handle it, and someone's going to physically update this data. So maybe that your process is to set the date into that it's been manually inventoried. Down here we have warranties and leases. That shouldn't need changing on deployment. I'm just going to flip to the finance tab, because again, there's a bunch of stuff in here which may need setting on deployment. Cost center, if you kind of work out, if you do your cost allocation and kind of charging to different parts of the organization, you're going to want to set a cost center there of who's going to pay for this device. Now it's been deployed to a user, put their cost center in, or the cost center that's paying for that, making sure all that's tied up. We've covered custodian. I'm just going to jump down here to some dates. We've got our loan date and that's a little typo there, loan return date. So that's very much part of our loan process. The equivalent for a regular deployment is down here with the assigned date and the expected end date. So this is when we're going to put in the date it was assigned, the date it was allocated to that user, and we've got the date we're expecting it back. Now again, in the real world, this area is very difficult to predict. The user rarely knows when they're going to be done with it, and if they tell you something, it's probably not correct anyway. So don't often see this used. Assigned date is a useful thing to have. It may be part of you may have some other process hanging off the back of that. You may kind of do like a refresh cycle. When someone's had a piece of kit for 3 years, they get allocated a new one, in which case that's going to be valuable information to have in there, so you can run a report of everything that's been assigned for more than 3 years. Let's get it refreshed. But it's a good opportunity to mention about how some things might seem valuable, but you've got to really consider, is it worth the effort of putting a date in this box? If you do your refresh a different way, you may do it off your received date. That's when you actually first received it, which is probably more accurate. You refresh after 3 years of actually having it, not of a particular user having it for 3 years. It may have already been 2 years old by then, by the time they even got it. You may just refresh model by model. So you say, right, this year we're going to get rid of all the generation 3 devices and we're going to replace them all with generation 4s. So you may refresh that way, in which case the assigned date, not so valuable. And don't forget, every time we save this form, I'm going to hit apply on this. Every time we make a change to an asset, we've got our kind of audit trail in the history tab. So, if just on an ad hoc basis we want to look up when was that actually given to that user, we can always find that in the history, and we'll see a full history of everything that was changed on that device. And we can see here that on this date at 10:55, I'm running out of time, Jeff Ross, we see who did it, changed it from in stock to deployed, and changed the location as well. So we know at that point it was deployed, and we know actually when that was happened. So we can look that up in the history. It's not so easy to report on. If you need to report on it, then you may want to use the assign date. But if you just need to sort of make sure you can get to it, then you've got the history as well. So that's kind of a good example of where things aren't actually worth the effort of filling in that box, because on a rare occasion you need to get to it, you can get to it anyway. Okay, just want to draw your attention to two other real quick things. On the related items, we've got obviously work items affecting this hardware asset. Now, your deployment process may well have a service request that goes with that, and you want to make a link up those two things. So as that life cycle goes on for that device, you can see a full history of kind of requests around it. So you'll see all the requests when it was actually purchased, when it was deployed, the request to get it, returned back, come and collect my equipment type request, and also all the incidents we'll see every time that the hardware went wrong. So we can kind of track what's going on with that, spot trends, identify kind of major issues, and get them fixed properly rather than just doing a simple fix each time. So again, that's something that's, as part of your deployment, there's likely to be a service request that you want to reference and link to. So again, you can see that full history of the assets lifecycle. All right, I am running out of time. I'm just going to jump back to the slides. I really quickly build this out. As we mentioned, we've got all those in that diagram. We've got all those arrows. We need to go through each of those steps and work out which fields need to be updated from what to what in each of those scenarios. We just did deployment as an example there. We're going to update the user, the location, the cost center, obviously the status from stock to deployed as a key one, maybe the assign date. All those things you need to make sure that's part of your deployment process from the system point of view. Whoever's doing that, whether it be anyone on the desktop team, the server team, network team deploying a network device, whatever it might be, those are the steps that need to be taken. Those are the fields that need to be updated as part of that process. And that needs repeating for every change of state. We've got a couple other kind of processes here just to consider that aren't so much one of those arrows. Other things that happen, we've got sending hardware for repair. You might have a status for in repair, in which case you can kind of fit it into your diagram, but it might be a kind of a separate thing managed in a separate way. Manual inventories. So do you every so often just go in and inventory a floor or inventory a stockroom, and update everything so it's accurate, make sure you've got everything tagged? That's going to flag up missing items maybe, and it's going to start to find these issues that we're going to talk about next time, how we deal with those. We're going to start flagging up those issues by doing our inventory. Hardware refreshes, again, it's basically like a big deployment, but in bulk. So you could start to use some of the bulk tools for that. We've got the Asset Excel, we've got the Asset Import Connector tool that were covered in the last session. You're going to want to follow that same process, updating those same exact fields, but you may want to use one of the bulk tools to do it, so you can deploy en masse a lot of devices if you're doing a big refresh or building a new office and like that. And obviously then we've got to consider that we've got these other kind of connectors, these other data sources that potentially feeding this information, and where possible it's great to be able to rely on those. I mentioned that the name, changing the name. You can rely on the if you can potentially rely on the SCCM connector and the asset workflows to update that name to the actual network name once it's been built and deployed onto a desk. Same for locations. I didn't mention at the time, but you can set locations based on subnets and IP addresses, all based on where it is. So and anywhere where you can rely on those kind of automated processes and not have someone actually doing it, is going to save you time, administrative effort, and reduce errors. So it's all worth doing. It can take us sometimes a couple of days to come through, so you've got to again consider a trade-off there. But generally that data is more accurate and up to date, so worth having in most cases. Okay, I'm going to wrap up now. Please get any questions in the question box as I just go through. Just want to say there's 4 things to mention here. If you want to get started, if you want to have a look and a play with some of this stuff, you can get a 30-day free trial of Ireson Asset Management. So please reach out, team@ireson.com, or you can reach out to me directly if you've got my details from the webinar registration. And we'd love to talk to you about that. Register for the remaining webinars on actually just at ireson.com website. You'll find the links to register for parts 3 and 4. So please do join us. Great to have you with us today. Thank you for joining, and yeah, please do register and come and see the next 2 sessions. If you need help with implementation, that's where the services team come in, that's where I come in. So I'd love to talk to you about that. If you're struggling with this stuff, either just technology, process, where do I even start, then we can help with all that, all those pieces. So again, get in touch and we can discuss. And finally, join the Ireson, join the discussion in the Ireson community. That's our online community of forums and feature requests. So please check that out, community.ireson.com. You can log in with your Ireson support details or a LinkedIn account and get involved in the discussion there. You'll find me on there. You can post questions on there, and I'll definitely get back to you. So anything that didn't get onto today, anything you think of after the webinar, please do reach out in one way or another to get in touch. Looking forward to hearing from you. I think that's my last slide. So yes, we are already slightly over time, so I'm just going to say thank you very much for joining. Appreciate it. And I'm going to hang out for a couple more minutes on this if there are any questions. So please, if you do have questions, put them in the question box, and I'll stay here. But otherwise, thank you very much, and hopefully look forward to seeing you in the next session in part 3 in September. All right, thank you. Okay, so we've got a couple of questions here. Which field is related to view my assets? Yes, so this is in the, I think if I'm answering the question right, it's when you go and look at a user's information page, you can see the assets they've got, and that is actually using the primary user field. Or maybe the question's around when you're creating a work item and you want to set a affected configuration item based on the affected user. Again, that's using the primary user field there of the hardware asset. If that doesn't answer the question, again, please post back. And how to automate to setting relation for related configuration item. Marek, I don't quite understand that question. How to automate setting the relation related configuration item? Is that on the hardware asset itself or on a work item? Do you want to just, if you're still part of the webinar, then please just post another question there. Okay, Claire followed up with to her question. If you put the asset name as a serial number, or if you don't know what the name will be and input that, is there a risk of duplication when a device is picked up on the SCM on the network, or will this be okay as long as serial numbers match? Yes, so the SCM import process, which goes through the Ireson workflows, but ultimately, yes, it matches on serial number. So as long as the serial number box is accurate to the actual serial number of the device, that will always match and you won't get a duplicate. Regardless of whatever the name is, it's that serial number. Make sure if you're going to put the serial number in the name box, you also need to definitely put it in the serial number box. That's the key field there in terms of matching up. So make sure you're putting the serial number exactly as it is, obviously, into that serial number box, and then everything will match up and you will avoid duplicates that way. Duplicates is actually an interesting area. We're going to talk more on that next time around as well, because again, you want to try and avoid them, and this sort of stuff will help, but can sometimes happen, so we can look at that as well. But yes, and a good way to get that still accurate is to invest in a cheapy USB barcode reader and scan the actual boxes or the labels on the bottom of your devices that the manufacturer puts there. You can get something for 20 euros equivalent. It's worth doing. So Marek, I'm still not quite understand what you're asking. I'm going to reach out to you. I've got your details, so I'm going to reach out to you directly. We'll discuss that because I'm not quite sure exactly what you need there. So if that's okay, I'll send you an email later on today, and we can discuss that. Okay, I think that's it. So for those of you still with us, thank you for staying to the end. If you had a question, didn't get to put it in, or I missed it somehow, apologies. Please do just reach out. We do want to make sure we get those questions answered. But yeah, thank you everyone, and I will see you on the next session.